What time is it? What time is it? It's time for Poduty and the news. Poduty and the news. The only live news podcast about podcasting from the stage. Poduty and the news. Poduty and the news. The only live news podcast about podcasting from the stage.
Well, I hope you know what time it is. It's time for Poduty in the News. I've got a great guest joining me tonight. It's Julie Marty-Pearson. How you doing tonight, Julie?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's cold here in Pittsburgh. We had 20 inches of snow yesterday, and the high until Sunday, the high it's going to be is 16 degrees.
I honestly could not. I do not even compute. I am in California where it is currently 58, and I was born and raised here, so I've never lived somewhere that cold, and I feel for all of you right now.
I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today, and they're saying something very similar. Like, how do you do it? And I'm like, honestly, it's really the best part of living in climate where you have 4 distinct seasons. Even though January and February are really tough and it's still getting dark at 5 p.m., there's just something about knowing that by mid-March, it's going to be 60 degrees and it's going to be light until 7 p.m. And you start to get more and more of this daytime back and life back, and you can get outside more, and you really get to appreciate 7-8 months of the year with 4 kind of not so great months.
That sounds nice. Yeah, we don't get 4, I would say, seasons. It kind of depends, but where I live gets very hot in the summer. We're over 100 for 3 or 4 months, and I do not enjoy that. So what you were talking about sounds good. I could deal with a couple months of that to enjoy the rest of the year.
Well, I know something else that you have, because I was listening to your new podcast, Still Becoming Woman Unmuted, and you were kind of joking about you started with 1 podcast, and now you have 3 podcasts. And it was really entertaining just to hear your perspective about podcasters kind of collect these things and we just start more podcasts. So tell us a little about your podcasts and the best way if we want to connect with you, and how do we listen to them?
Yeah, you can find all of my information, all of my podcasts and things on my website, which is easy. It's just juliemartypearson.com. And like you said, I just started another last week. I've been messing around with this idea for a while, and I just thought I'd put it out there, and I've gotten a great response. So I'm really excited about Still Becoming Women Unmuted. It's really going to focus on women's issues, women's topics, just a place for us to share and grow and kind of learn together. And I have 2 other podcasts. My other is Podcast Your Story, and that is related to my business, and I share my tips and tricks there about how to start a podcast, how to grow, and how to be a good guest, which I get asked about a lot. And then my third is kind of my passion project. It's where I started in podcasting. It's called The Story of My Pet. And I interview people all over the world talking about stories of pet rescue, animal fostering, animal adoption, and why everybody should help out the animals in their community and volunteer and foster for overcrowded shelters and all sorts of different topics. So I really love that one. I've always been a huge animal lover, and they're a big part of my life. And I keep that going because that's kind of the really fun part of podcasting for me, is getting to talk to people about their pets.
Yeah, I think I saw on one episode you had somebody who rescued, I think, over 2,000 pets or helped foster 2,000 pets. It was quite an impressive number.
Yeah, I've had some really amazing conversations with people that, I thought I knew a lot. I thought I've always been an advocate. And then I started the podcast and I was like, wow, there's a lot I need to learn. So no wonder we need to educate other people. But yeah, I've met some really incredible people that have some people are doing it on the side as a volunteer thing, but I've also interviewed a lot of people who work full time in rescue and shelters and nonprofits, and it's just really amazing what they're dedicating their lives to. But we also talk about fun things and how cute our pets are and the silly things they do and how we can't imagine if we didn't have them in our lives. So I try to make it a mix of the stories we tell.
Awesome. And that all those links will be in the show notes. There's the podcast. The story of my pet was great. I was listening to some of the episodes, doing some of my research on you, Julie, and just a great little channel on YouTube. Check it out. The link will be in the show notes. Make sure you support the guests. And also, all my guests who come on the show, we're doing something a little special. It's called Poduty and the Crew. And Julie will now be part of the crew. If you go to the website where you can find this podcast, you're going to see Julie with all of her links and any show that Julie has ever appeared on. So we're building out this huge library. So Julie can be on this show and Julie can be on future episodes. And we're going to have all those links there, all of it archived in one place there. It's going to be pretty impressive.
That sounds very cool. I will be checking it out myself now that I'm on it. I think I talk about it all the time, but podcast guesting is such a great thing because it is like expanding our community and our connections and all of that. And I put all of my guest episodes on my website just for that reason because I want to share them too.
Yeah, it's a great way. So check out those links, news.poduty.com, PODUTY.com, all the links, all the show notes, all the episodes, audio and video in one place, which means we know what time it is. Are you ready for our first story?
Let's go. There are some interesting ones.
You may not fully understand because this is going to be people in the path of the snowstorm that just came through the East Coast here. But snow panic is real. And the Rizzuto Show podcast delivered another masterclass in live culture reactive podcasting with an episode that turns a simple winter forecast into a full-blown social experiment. From grocery store panic and empty shelves to the absolute horror of watching someone pay with a check, the show captures how fast adults unravel when snow enters the chat. Layered with listener emails about awkward office behavior, relationship limbo, and workplace etiquette wars, plus celebrity nonsense, sports updates, and sponsored studio cams, the episode shows why live comedy podcasts thrive. They react instantly to shared experiences and turn everyday chaos into communal laughter. And one of the things that you said you've never been in a winter environment. One of the things, it's very COVID-like, the behavior of people when there's a storm coming. Everybody has to go to the store and they buy everything. There won't be milk or bread, paper towels, toilet paper. You'll have to go hunting to find stuff. The shelves literally get wiped empty. When you're at the worst case scenario, the snow happened Sunday into Monday. We were already driving Monday afternoon, yet there's this full blown panic in the area. And a podcast like this is going to be a live stream show. And this is an example of kind of pulling on, cultural moments, things that are happening in society, and kind of piggyback on that for the content for your show. So this is one of those shows where this is what the public's talking about. They're going crazy trying to get all the groceries they can. And here this podcast comes in and really capitalizes on that moment.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense because I saw so much of this on social media. People go into the store talking about it. One of my friends who's a podcaster was posting about, she would say, why are there no eggs, milk, or bread anywhere? And she was like, how much French toast are you guys making right now? She said she couldn't find those three things at any of the stores she went to. And it's just so funny to think, it's like, guys, you're not going to be cut off from the world for a month.
It is full-blown panic. And to be able to have a live stream podcast, something that's even in your industry, your niche, you're going to find things that capitalize on the current moments. And I really think that's what this episode did really well, is they took this major thing that had news coverage 24/7 for a week leading up to it, and they had a little comedy about it. They were, teasing and jesting each other about what's going to happen. Did you get your eggs? Did you get the milk? And And I think that's just a new way to think about podcasting in a way you may not think about. You may be sitting there writing a script or preparing questions for an interview. But another perspective, if you're going to live stream it, you might as well really get into the pop culture, really get into the psyche of everybody who's out there running around to get the milk and bread.
Yeah, and I think it's smart because, I mean, one of the benefits of live streaming is you don't have to edit and then put up later and all of that. So you can be at the immediate moment of what's happening around you, whether that's good or bad. But yeah, I think there's definitely a niche there in podcasting that not a lot of us who record and, edit get to do because we're on a schedule or we put it out certain days. But doing it live and just delving into what's happening in the world is it sounds like they had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and this could be a special episode. It doesn't have to be your normal format. They look like they do it pretty regularly, maybe part of a radio station. But if you can have a special event or kind of reward your fans with a special type of episode, this might be one strategy to consider. It's take things from your industry, take things that you're interested in, and make them current, and just have a conversation about it.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm playing with my newest podcast is doing some of my episodes live stream, maybe even a panel, so people can ask questions in real time and we can respond, because I've never really done that with any of mine, and there's definitely a different type of focus or content you can get that way.
Yeah, let's keep it going. I have a second live stream. This podcast mixes live stream podcasts, live podcasts that happen in front of audiences, and even podcasts that happen as part of other events like conferences. We even see it with concerts. Sometimes the opening acts now are podcasts. So let's keep it going with another live stream. The Brothers of the Serpent, niche, nerdy, and live. The SnakeBros pull 4,700 views. The SnakeBros live podcast proves once again that you don't need celebrity guests or a massive stage to win with live podcasting. A recent live streamed episode pulled over 4,700 views, combining real-time discussion, deep dive analysis, and long-form debate on topics ranging from fasting and extreme weather in Texas to geomagnetic storms and a controversial academic paper on ancient Egyptian stone vessels. The episode shows how live podcasts can thrive by letting audiences watch the thinking process unfold, disagreements, critiques, and all, turning complex subject matter into compelling, binge-worthy content that rewards curiosity and keeps viewers engaged far beyond a traditional audio format. And Julie, we're kind of building on the last story there. There's a way to connect with people. It doesn't have to be kind of like that morning show format. It could be something that you're passionate about. It could be like the paper on Egyptian stone vessels, that made for interesting content somehow. They were able to pull it together. Maybe that's something they studied in college and they're just obsessed with, but they were able to take something abstract and really make a show out of it.
That was the part that stuck out to me when I was reading about this before. I was like, Egyptian stone vessels. That's very specific. But, and I could say, as a guest, one of the things I love about being a guest is seeing what people are doing. I've been on podcasts. One was for Bruce Springsteen superfans. That's a very specific podcast, but we had this great long conversation about lots of different things. So I think it is cool when people really get specific, but they also allow it to evolve from that point.
Dive in, find the things you love, because you're going to find with your podcast, you're going to find other people who love the same things. And if you're passionate about it, you'll find your audience. Get in there, figure it out, make it interesting, have fun with it. And this is just a great example of doing that live and pulling your audience together. 4,700 people also wanted to know about Egyptian stone vessels.
Wow. And I think that's also why we see in mainstream media, all the big shows, all the popular shows have podcast buddies. They said, after this episode, check out the podcast about this show. They even have some new ones where they're having, famous people come in to host to talk to the people that are in the television show after each episode. So that is because everything can be a cult following, whether it's a TV show or a book or just Egyptian stone vessels, apparently.
And you see that a lot. Like you just mentioned, HBO does this really well. Apple does it really well. they're combining this extended content in podcast format. Yes, you're going to watch the show, you're going to binge watch the series, but then there's this additional bonus content that you can only get through the podcast. And Julie's spot on. Like, that's a way to keep that community growing, keep that community engaged in between episodes.
And I think that's also why so many actors and sports people have created their own shows, because they've realized they can do it for themselves without it actually being the, companies behind the shows that are creating it. They can create it for themselves. I've seen a lot. I know there's a couple ones for the show The Office that the people who used to be on it do like rewatches of all the episodes. So there's so many different approaches.
I know the Boy Meets World is a big one. That one was, I forget what they call it. But those shows. I think How I Met Your Mother has a podcast as well. Like, these classic TV shows now are revisiting where they have this cult following, and they're just going into it and keeping that community engaged.
That makes me think I might have to create a Clue podcast. Clue is my favorite movie from back in the 80s, and I'm like, or there could already be some, and I just haven't seen them yet.
Like all the Easter eggs in Clue would be like what's all the? There's just so much scenery in the back. The set design was so elaborate in that movie.
Yes,
there's probably 1,000 stories in the background.
Oh, I love that. Now I'm gonna have a fourth podcast.
Well, let's see, because maybe you could present that podcast at this conference, which I just wanted to highlight. This was the map for an event coming up in the communications industry. And if you look at the highlighted section in the upper right corner, guess what it says? If you really, really zoom in, it says podcast stage. So this is a conference, and part of the showroom floor, the event floor, is going to be a stage dedicated just to podcasting. So Connected America 2026 just unveiled its future-focused agenda for this April in Texas, and buried among the keynotes, AI discussions, and broadband policy panels is a major signal for podcasters, a dedicated live podcast lounge built into the conference experience. Taking place April 14th at the Irving Convention Center, the event isn't just hosting conversations about connectivity, it's actively creating content in real time with live interviews featuring senior industry leaders alongside startup pitches and policy discussions. This is another example of how conferences recognizing podcasts as a primary storytelling and distribution channel, not just a post-event marketing, and it shows how live podcast stages are becoming the standard feature for major industry gatherings. And I heard on here it says a pitch fest that I know, Jolie, you work on pitch fest. I saw on your YouTube channel. That's so something that you're building. If you were part of the communications industry, that could be something that you could possibly present on this stage.
Yeah, this is crazy. I mean, I've heard about people doing some live recordings at conferences, but it's usually podcast conferences. So to see them have a dedicated space for that, that's really amazing. But that also shows that industry is keeping up with what people want and how people communicate and how they get information. It's like, if an industry isn't tapping into podcasting, then they really are losing out.
Yeah, and this is the communications industry. If you think about what you're working in, Julie also has the story of my pet. There's probably 1,000 pet conferences or meetups or adoption events going on across the country. You could tie your show into those types of events. So whether or not you're in broadband communications for Connected America, find something in your industry you can probably piggyback on and maybe get a free ticket, maybe get your ticket comped, maybe be a volunteer or help make the event a better place. You can do that because you have this asset of your podcast.
And I can say that is very true, because I actually have done that. This past summer, I got to go to CatCon, which is an annual conference for cat lovers in Pasadena, California. And I got to sign up as media with my podcast. And so I got a media pass and got to walk around for 2 days interviewing people and taking photos and participating. And it was amazing. And then I covered it on my podcast.
That's 100% what we're talking about. That's incredible that you're thinking that far ahead and doing those types of things already, to be able to just, leverage your way. Like, hey, I got this thing where I talk to other people who take care of pets, who care about their story. Then they invite you into their conference to walk around, interview some of the event booths, some of the speakers. you get this inside kind of quote unquote inside baseball look at the cat convention. That there's no better way to tie yourself to your audience than to just go where your audience is.
First of all, it was fun because I had gone to CatCon many years ago, so I was excited. But a couple of the booths that they had hundreds of booths. It was crazy. It was like 3,000 people. You wouldn't believe it, but it was true. And a couple of the booths were actually being run by people I have had on my podcast before as interviews. So I got to meet them in person. And then I walked around and talked to everybody. And I have several newer guests that are coming on through meeting there. And I also handed out, stickers that have my podcast name on it and little paw prints. So there's a lot of different ways you could use an experience like that. And it doesn't even have to be directly tied to your podcast. It could just be loosely tied to it too.
Yeah, a great way. Go where your audience is. There's no better way to meet people that are like you than to go where they like to go. I guess I tried to make a saying out of that. It didn't quite work, but I think you got it.
Yeah. Go where your people are.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. I love that story. We just adopted 3 cats over the summer. I tore my Achilles and I'm resting, and my family's like, hey, we want to get some cats. And so while I can't walk around the house, we adopted 3 Maine Coons we found. We didn't know what they were. It turns out they were Maine Coons. So we don't know how big they are, but they are 6 months old now, and they are as big as our 15-year-old cat. So we'll see what happens. I'll keep you posted.
Maine Coons those are big cats.
Yeah. I don't know if they're 100% but they're already pretty big. Well, let's keep it going at conferences. Here's another example of a conference. A smart example of long-tail live podcasting comes from IAB Europe, which recorded an entire retail media roundtable podcast miniseries live at the Retail Media Impact Summit in Amsterdam. Sponsored by Media Markt Saturn, the sessions weren't just for attendees in the room, they were captured strategically to be released throughout the year, extending the life of the conference far beyond the single event. It's a strong reminder that live podcasting isn't only about the moment on stage, it's about creating a content engine that keeps delivering value, visibility, and relevance long after the conference doors close. And this could be one for Poduty in the News. I could go to a podcast conference, to Radio Days Europe, I think is a big one coming up. I'd love to do Poduty in the News from the stage.
That's so cool and so strategic. I mean, they were thinking ahead. They were thinking about all the content they could get and how they could, use it over time, which also saves a lot of time having to do more events throughout the year. I mean, we talk about batching even for us who record and edit, but this is such a interesting way to do it and to really be expanding the ways to connect with people that, are much broader than when you just do it on Zoom or, in a local studio. Especially when people travel from all over to go to a conference, right?
This is something that we're seeing with conferences happening. We're talking about going to conferences as your podcast and maybe performing there, or like Julie did with the CAT conference, getting additional content. But we're seeing conferences use this strategically before, during, and after the conference. Leading up to the conference, they're having people release podcasts saying, hey, we're going to be there. Come find us. We'll be at this booth. We're visiting these people. We'll be on this stage. Then during the conference, they're live streaming from the conference. They're getting content from the conference. And then for the rest of the year after the conference, all these podcasters that they invited to the conference, they are releasing content all year long about the conference, only snowballing the effect for next year's attendees. So, this is an example of a conference using that strategy to get people to deliver content to people all year long.
Well, and what's smart about that is that it saves them money too in marketing and promotion by having a lot of podcasters do it for them, both pre and post. And if you have a podcast you love and you hear them talk about it, you're much more likely to want to go to the conference next year. I've had so many people say that about CatCon because I talked about it on all my socials and did live videos and shared a lot of photos. And so, of course, that was the whole point of CatCon letting me have a media pass, is because then I'm probably convincing some people to show up next year.
I just love it. Great way to promote, great way to connect with the community. It's a win-win for the podcasters. It's a win-win for the conference. And you get this multiplier effect by working together. And we'll keep it going. Let's go to San Diego. We're going to the voice of San Diego. When sports leadership steps onto the podcast stage, the VOSD podcast took their microphones live to Soda Bar for a special episode featuring J.D. Wicker, athletic director at San Diego State University. In front of a live audience, Wicker tackled tough questions about ticket pricing at Snapdragon Stadium, empty seats, and how SDSU is navigating the rapidly shifting landscape of college athletics, including NIL and sports betting. The episode shows how live podcasting creates a rare environment where public figures can't hide behind press releases, blending real accountability with real-time audience energy in a way traditional interviews rarely match. Hey, here's a great example of going into the public, right? You could do an interview one-on-one in a private studio and record it and then release it, or you could take that conversation out in the public, have a night out, sell some tickets, maybe a fundraiser for a certain charity or a certain part of the athletic club, and just have this, intimate experience with your fans and kind of answer all those questions that they are. Hey, what's going on? Why can't we sell any tickets?
No, yeah, it's such an interesting approach, and it's something they could be doing after every game, and different people on the team are interviewed. There's so many ways you could play into it, but I do love this idea that, he was willing to show up and be there live and allow whatever questions that may come to, be asked of him. It definitely is a great way to connect with the fans, but also connect with fans who may not agree with the way things are going either.
Yeah, and I love this set. There's just this padded background. It's almost all black ceiling, black padding, black tablecloth. You can see the fans in the front. These podcasts don't have to be giant events filling theaters or conference centers. You can do this in a coffee shop, in the media center of a library. There's lots of places where you can perform your podcast live and connect locally with people in your community.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just talking to another fellow podcaster about that, and we were researching some of the places that we might be able to create our own events for women in podcasting instead of just doing it all virtual, because no matter what, nothing beats in person. It's a different vibe. It's a different kind of connection. And that's just in conferences or meetings, but it's also with live podcasting. I mean, stuff's going to happen that wouldn't happen if you're, at recording it over Zoom or, even live streaming.
Yeah, people are going to get tired of hearing me say this, but the thing I found out that I love most about live podcasting is whenever you go see a podcast live, it's a once-in-a-lifetime performance. It will never happen again. It's different than comedy and music. If a band comes to town and they play their 15 songs as their set list, they go to the next town and they play the same exact 15 songs for that town. And comedians work on material, and by the time they have a routine, they play that routine in town to town. But when you go see a podcast, a live podcast, like Julie and I can't do this show again tomorrow in Cleveland. You've already seen it. It's been released and edited. This show tonight is once in a lifetime. This will never happen again in the history of the world. These 6 stories, this moment, you can only get it by either being here in the moment or listening to the archive, to the recording. And that's something I'm finding out how special live podcasting is. It's the ultimate FOMO.
Right? Oh yeah. There's a couple that have toured. There's a couple in like the pop culture space, like Lady Gang and the Giggly Squad. And that's how they've become as big as they are, is by doing the tours of the live shows, because everybody wants to be there and hear what they say or hear what questions are answering about some scandal that just dropped or whatever it may be. And it is different than like a stand-up comedian doing their regular thing. It's them actually talking and conversating versus doing, something they have structured and they do every time. Yeah.
Speaking of every time, could you win by betting every time? Here's Here's a Sportsbook podcast about a gambler. A lot of gambling going on in these last two stories. The Boulder City podcast hosted Roger Gross. Gross? I'll go Roger Gross. It's taking the show live on February 16th with a special in-person podcast and book signing featuring legendary Sportsbook executive and author Art Manteris. Recorded live at Skinny Bar, the episode brings audiences face-to-face with one of the original architects of modern sports betting, whose career spans the Stardust, Caesar's Palace, and the iconic Superbook in Las Vegas. The event blends storytelling, audience Q&A, and a book signing for The Bookie, showing how podcasts can turn local venues into must-attend experiences without ticket fees, massive production, or celebrity hype. And one of the things I've been seeing lately is people used to do these book tours. They would go on morning radio, local television. They'd talk about the book. They'd promote the book, say, hey, you can get it at Barnes & Noble. But now what we're seeing is people are wrapping their book release in a podcast tour. And here's a place called the Skinny Bar. The Boulder City podcast is inviting them on to do a live show, talk about the book, probably get some of those crazy stories from early Vegas, some of the sports. But how many friends did you have that had their fingers broken from trying to rob the casino? And you're going to hear all these little stories of the grit and the dirt and the seedy side probably of Las Vegas. I'm just imagining in my head what gambling would have been like whenever Art was running the town. And this is, if you're a gambler, gambling is running rampant in this country, but if you like betting and sports betting, here's a way to sit down, hear a story like you would have listened to a radio station 50, 60 years ago, to hear this inside information about what really happened and went down.
Well, and it's kind of a collision of a lot of different things because, like you said, book tours, book signings are big, but you don't see them very much anymore because they're obviously not doing what they used to do because there are other platforms where people can get interest and get people to buy their books. But the idea of, instead of it just being a boring signing where you stand in line and get an autograph on your book, it's a live thing where anybody can ask them questions and you get the book. And I did something like this years ago. I want to say it was at least 10 years ago. I love Bravo. I love reality shows. I watch all Real Housewives. And I was working in LA at the time, and Andy Cohen, who's one of the big producers, was there. It was plugging his book, but it was him in conversation with I can't think of her name now, with a female comedian. So we all went there and sat in the theater and heard the two of them speak. And then after, he let people stand in line and get signatures on his book. So it's the same idea. It's mixing the live podcast with a book or something like that that people are trying to get people to buy or even just share. It's really interesting.
I love it. I mean, you hear a couple stories from the book, you may want to buy the book, and the author's there, the subject of the book is there. You can maybe get it personalized and really walk away with a cool souvenir or a cool way to remember the evening. And the tickets probably are $10, $15, $20. These types of events aren't bank breakers, and you get to have a night out. It's at a bar. You get a couple of drinks, maybe some appetizers, hear some stories, and maybe $30, $40 all in. It's just a unique way to experience an evening with other people who also like this type of entertainment, like sports betting. You're going to be in a room, you're going to hear these stories, and just have a very unique and interesting night out.
And I can see this happening even like we were talking about with TV shows. Like Heated Rivalry is huge right now, and that's based on a book. So I could see that author doing this live, podcast interviews, pushing her latest book, talking about the TV show version. I mean, there's so many different ways that media companies and publishing companies could tap into this.
It's a great strategy all around. So again, I like to go back to think of your podcast. Think of, where do you operate in? Where does your community operate in? Where can you find your fans? And kind of plug yourself into that. Could you be a guest on a podcast like that's happening here on the Boulder City podcast? Or is there some kind of event that you can tap into and just take your podcast live? I promise you, it's a completely different experience. Like Julie was saying, you have to experience it live. You've got to do it live one time. You'll be hooked, and you end up like me, sitting in a theater on a Tuesday night doing something you love, because there's just nothing like live podcasting. It's a whole new game, and I really believe that this is the future of where podcasting is going to be going in the next 2 to 3 years. So get in early. I didn't warn you before we started, but this does go so fast. We've already gone through our 6 stories. We're at the end of the show. I'd like to turn it over one last time. Anything you'd like to plug, promote, talk about, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I know, I can't believe how fast it went. I thought we'd never get through all those stories. Well, I would just love to say, if there's anybody out there listening to this who's been thinking about starting a podcast or wants to start being a guest, maybe they're an author and they want to start plugging their book through podcasts. I have a community where I support people. It's a low-cost monthly community called Podcast Your Story. And it's somewhere where people who are hosts, guests, or both come and connect and network. But we also do monthly workshops, and as you mentioned earlier, I do a live pitch fest where everybody gets to come and they get 3 minutes to pitch themselves as a guest and why people should, book them, and then they get the clip of it after so they can share it on social. So we do that. We do so many different things, and I would love to have anybody interested in learning more or growing in podcasting to come join our community, the Podcast Your Story community membership. And again, you can check it out on my website, juliemartypearson.com.
Awesome. Thank you. That sounds like so much fun. If you're ever in Pittsburgh, I already invited Julie to Pittsburgh. If you're ever in town, the stage is for you. Whatever night you want, we're going to book it, and maybe we could do a little Pitch Fest Pittsburgh.
Oh my God, that I am writing it down right now. And I was just talking to somebody about this, and I will be saying we've got a spot in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you about why, because I have a theater space. You see it here. I'd love for you to host your show on our theater. It holds 40 seats, but we can live stream to thousands. This little space has the same capacity of Madison Square Garden, and I really tease up the offer. It's hard to say no. I do no contracts. I do no minimum ticket sales. If you want to do your show here, I'll build you an event landing page. I'll sell the tickets for you. I will produce the event. I will record the event for you, and I will give you back the recording without any ownership. It's your content for you to use in perpetuity. And at the end of the night, we sit down together. I show you the ticketing dashboard, and we split the door 50-50. If you like it, let's do it again. If you don't, we shake hands and walk away. We tried it, and it was a good time. But I really want you at home to experience live podcasting, and I'm doing that by taking all the risk out of it. So if you have a podcast in the Pittsburgh area or Bakersfield, California, come on down. If you're ever in town, I will reserve the space for you, and we will put on a live podcast. Poduty.com, Poduty.com. And unfortunately, that's the end of the show. And I know what time it is. I don't want to say because I hate saying goodbye, but it is, or it was.
What time is it? What time is it?